When people talk about great leadership, they throw around words like inspiring, visionary, strategic, but if you dig underneath any truly effective leader, if you actually watch what they do, not just how they're described, you'll find one common skill: they are ruthlessly clear. Clarity isn't just about being organized or knowing what's on your calendar for the week. Clarity is about intentional communication. It's about making sure everyone on your team understands exactly where you're going, why you're going there, and how they are expected to help get you there. That's it, that's the work. If your team is confused, they are distracted, and distracted teams don't win. I work with forming teams every single day, and one of the biggest disconnects I see is this: leaders believe they've communicated something clearly just because they said it. But communication isn't what you say, it's what's understood. You can't afford to assume people just get it. You have to check for clarity, repeat your message, reinforce your expectations, and then back it all up with action. Otherwise, your vision is just noise. Let me be really direct here. If you're not clear on your purpose, your team won't be either. If you're changing direction every other week, chasing every new trend, or pivoting without context, your team is going to lose trust. Because people don't follow inconsistent leaders, they follow conviction, they follow structure, they follow someone who says, "This is what we're doing, here's why it matters, and here's how we're going to execute." And I know what you might be thinking, but what if I'm still figuring it out? Good, then get clear before you start delegating. Don't dump half-baked ideas on your team and expect full commitment in return. That's not leadership, that's chaos. Leadership is being the calm in the storm, the one who has thought 2 steps ahead and can draw the map, even if the terrain changes. Now, let's talk about the team side of this, because clarity isn't just about the company's purpose, it's also about individual roles. Your people need to know what success looks like in their seat. What are their outcomes? What are their KPI? What does excellence mean for them today, this week, this quarter? You can't expect high performance from people who are operating in the dark. One of the most powerful things you can do as a leader is sit down with each team member and define expectations together. Not just tasks, but outcomes. What are they responsible for? How are they measured? When are they winning? And this part is non-negotiable, you follow up, you review progress, you hold them to it. Because clarity without accountability is just a motivational poster on the wall. Let's take it a step further. Clarity also removes emotional confusion. You want to reduce drama in your culture, get clear. Get clear on roles, on reporting structures, on decision rights. Most of the friction that happens in organizations is not personal, it's structural. It's because someone wasn't sure if they were supposed to own something, or if someone else was supposed to, or if they were even allowed to take action. That ambiguity kills productivity, it kills trust, and it creates a breeding ground for resentment. Clarity stops that, and here's the thing: being clear doesn't mean being rigid. You can still be flexible, still iterate, still evolve, but when you make changes, you communicate them clearly. You give people context, you say, "Here's what's changing, here's why, and here's how it affects you." That's how you keep people aligned even when the plan shifts. You know what else happens when you lead with clarity. Your best people stay, because high performers don't leave organizations where they feel seen, heard, and directed. They leave environments where they're constantly guessing. Your best people want to win, and winners need a scoreboard. They want to know what the target is. They want to know that their effort matters. If you can't provide that level of direction, they will find a leader who can. I want to challenge you with something right now. Look at your team. Are they moving fast? Are they making confident decisions? Are they executing with energy? Or are they hesitant, constantly checking in, asking questions they should already know the answers to? That's not a people problem, that's a clarity problem, and it's your responsibility to fix it. It starts with purpose. Why do you exist as a team? What's the mission you're waking up to every day? How does that mission show up in your culture, in your goals, in your conversations? If that's not clear to you, it won't be clear to anyone else, so write it down, say it out loud, repeat it until it's boring to you, because only then is it becoming second nature to your team. Over-communicate. Simplify, align, that's your job. Clarity isn't flashy. It doesn't always feel exciting, but it's the secret weapon of every elite team. It creates focus, builds trust, and drives execution. Without it, you're just a group of talented individuals running in different directions. With it, you're unstoppable. Let me say something that might sting a little. Most hiring mistakes don't happen because you chose someone who lacked skills. They happen because you hired someone who didn't believe what you believe. They didn't align with your mission, your pace, your expectations, and that disconnect. It's expensive, not just in dollars. It costs you culture, momentum, trust, and time. If you want to build a team that wins, stop hiring resumes. Start hiring alignment. Skills can be taught, certifications can be earned, experience can be developed, but values, drive, belief in the mission, that's either there or it's not. And if you hire someone who doesn't match the energy and purpose of your organization, you will spend your time trying to drag them forward instead of building something with them. That's not sustainable. That's not leadership, that's babysitting. Hiring for alignment starts with you getting radically clear on who you are as a company. What do you believe in? What behaviors do you reward? What do you not tolerate? Because if you haven't defined that, how can you expect someone else to buy into it? Your company should not be a mystery. Your purpose, your pace, your standards, they should be loud and obvious, the kind of obvious that makes the wrong person opt out. That's right, you want people to select out if they don't feel connected to your mission. That's a win, because the only thing worse than no hire is the wrong hire. A bad fit doesn't just underperform, they pull others down with them. They erode culture from the inside. Here's the truth that most leaders don't want to accept. Your hiring process is your culture filter. It's not just about finding talent. It's about protecting the standards you've worked so hard to build. And that means you need to ask different questions during interviews. Instead of just focusing on past experience or technical skills, dig into how they think, ask what motivates them, ask what kind of environment they thrive in. Ask what they believe leadership means. You'll learn way more about their future performance from their mindset than from their resume. Hiring for alignment also means being honest about the job. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't downplay the pressure. If the role demands long hours, fast decision making, constant learning, say that. Set real expectations, not just for the tasks, but for the energy and attitude the role requires. Because when you attract people who are built for your pace, they don't just survive. They thrive, they lean in, they bring energy, they make you better, and let's be real, this matters even more when you're growing fast. High growth companies are chaotic by nature, roles evolve, systems change, expectations rise. If someone's only here because they like the job description, they're going to struggle. But if they're here because they believe in why you're doing what you're doing, they'll adapt, they'll push through because they're not just working a job, they are building something with you. So let me ask you, are you hiring for that kind of buy-in? Are you selecting people who will protect and promote your values? Or are you settling for skill sets and hoping they'll figure it out later? Hope is not a strategy. Culture doesn't build itself. You have to design it, and it starts with who you let through the door. I've seen this play out so many times. Leaders bring in someone incredibly talented, but within weeks there's tension. Not because the person can't do the work, but because they're questioning the vision, resisting the pace, or dragging their feet on accountability. That's not a skill gap, that's an alignment gap, and if you don't address it, it spreads. Other team members start to question if the standards still matter. If this person gets away with it, why should they keep pushing? And just like that, your high-performance culture starts to crumble. But the opposite is also true. When you hire someone who is deeply aligned, someone who wants to be held to a high standard, someone who chooses to go the extra mile, someone who believes in what you're doing, it's like fuel to the fire. They elevate the room, they bring ideas, they bring ownership, they raise the bar not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. That's the power of alignment. It multiplies, it compounds, and it creates momentum that skill alone can never achieve. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying skills don't matter. Of course they do, but they are only one part of the equation. You can't afford to separate performance from belief. You need both. So hire people who want to win the same game you're playing. People who will stay late not because they're told to, but because they care about the outcome. People who think, how can I solve this? Instead of, that's not my job. That's how you build a team that moves fast. That's how you create trust. That's how you scale. So raise your standard, hire for alignment first, skill second, and when you do, you won't just have a team, you'll have a movement. If there's one thing that separates teams that move from teams that stall, it's accountability. Not talent, not vision, not big ideas. It's the simple, consistent act of setting expectations, measuring outcomes, and holding people to them. That's it. Accountability creates momentum because it turns intention into execution. It transforms we should into we did. And in a fast-paced, high-growth environment, execution is everything. Let's get real. Most teams don't lack ambition. They lack follow-through. They talk a big game in meetings, they brainstorm, they ideate. But when you look at the scoreboard weeks later, nothing's moved. That gap between what was promised and what was delivered, that's an accountability issue. And the longer it's allowed to exist, the more normalized it becomes. Now, some people flinch at the word accountability because they associate it with punishment. That's not what we're talking about. Accountability isn't about calling people out, it's about calling people up. It's about helping them become the most effective, most powerful version of themselves. High performers crave accountability. They want to know where they stand, they want to win, and they know they can't win if there's no standard. As a leader, your job is to make that standard crystal clear. You cannot hold someone accountable for something you never clearly communicated. That means you need to set expectations before the work begins. Define what done looks like. Define what excellent looks like. Don't assume your team knows. Spell it out. Be specific, because vague expectations create vague results. Once the expectation is set, you have to follow up. Consistently, not just when there's a problem. Accountability isn't a once-a-quarter check-in. It's a daily, weekly rhythm. It's built into your meetings, your one-on-ones, your team culture. You ask the hard questions. You look at the metrics, you evaluate performance based on outcomes, not just effort, and here's the truth. When you consistently hold people accountable, momentum builds, people start moving faster. They think more strategically, they start anticipating problems instead of reacting to them. Why? Because they know their work is being seen, because they know it matters, because they know someone is paying attention. There is something deeply motivating about knowing your performance isn't invisible, and it works both ways. When people do great work and you acknowledge it, they feel energized. When they miss the mark and you address it, they course correct. Both moments build trust, both moments create clarity, and that clarity leads to speed. But let's be honest, this only works if you're willing to be direct. Accountability requires courage. It means having hard conversations. It means calling out missed deadlines, underperformance, or repeated excuses, not to embarrass or shame, but to grow, to fix it, because avoiding those conversations doesn't protect your people. It protects comfort zones. And comfort zones don't produce momentum. They produce stagnation. If you've got someone on your team who keeps dropping the ball and you keep letting it slide, you're not being kind. You're being unclear. And unclear leadership is ineffective leadership. Every time you ignore poor performance, you're sending a message to your high performers. This is acceptable, and that's how culture erodes, not all at once. Quietly, slowly, through unchecked patterns. Now flip the script. What happens when everyone on your team knows they will be held to a high standard every single week? What happens when there's no room to hide? No room to coast, no room to make excuses. People rise, the energy shifts. People lean in because they know the game is real, and real games have scoreboards. That's what creates urgency. That's what creates focus. That's what creates momentum. Accountability also builds confidence. Think about it. How can someone feel truly confident if they never know whether they're winning or not? When you hold someone accountable and coach them through the gaps, they grow. They see progress, they start owning more, they stop waiting for permission and start taking initiative. That's how leadership is built inside teams, one clear expectation at a time, one honest conversation at a time. One follow through at a time, and let me say this, you are not exempt. As the leader, you are the first person who must be accountable. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you miss the mark, own it. Your team is watching how you respond to pressure. They're watching how you handle failure. If you model radical accountability, they will follow your lead. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like goal setting that's not fluffy. It looks like metrics that are visible, reviewed, and talked about every single week. It looks like feedback that's timely, direct, and constructive. It looks like celebrating the wins that matter, not just the easy ones. And it looks like never letting mediocrity slide just because someone is trying hard. Effort matters, but results matter more. When you build a culture of accountability, you don't have to micromanage. You don't have to chase people down because the system holds people, the culture holds people, and that's how you scale. That's how you build a team that moves, adapts, and grows without you being in every room. So if your team is stuck, if progress is slow, if your meetings feel like déjà vu, it's time to ask the hard question, where is accountability missing, and then fix it, because once accountability is in place, everything accelerates. That's the spark, that's the switch, and that's how you build momentum that doesn't stop. The biggest mistake leaders make when they think about leadership development is assuming it's reserved for people at the top. For the senior roles, for the high potentials, that kind of thinking is outdated, and frankly, it's what keeps organizations stuck. If you want to build a team that wins, you have to develop leaders at every level. Because leadership isn't about titles, it's about ownership. It's about how people show up, how they think, and how they move things forward, regardless of their position. Let's be real, you don't need more followers. You need problem solvers, you need decision makers, you need people who don't wait to be told what to do but see what needs to be done and take action. That's leadership. And if you're the only one on your team operating like that, you are the bottleneck. You are the reason your team is moving slowly, because when everything has to go through you, nothing moves with speed. So the real question becomes, are you training leadership at every level, or are you hoarding it? Because if you're not actively building up the people around you, you're just building dependence. You might feel busy, you might feel important, but you're not building something scalable, you're building something fragile. Developing leaders starts by changing how you define leadership. It's not about hierarchy, it's about behavior. Are you creating an environment where people are encouraged to take initiative? Are they being coached to think critically, to make decisions, to own their outcomes? Or are they just following a to-do list and waiting for instructions? Because you don't grow leaders with checklists, you grow leaders with challenges. Every single person on your team has the potential to lead something. A project, a process, a result. Leadership development means giving people space to step up before they feel ready. That's how confidence is built through action, through being trusted with real responsibility and being held to real outcomes. Not shadowing and not learning in theory, but actually owning something that matters, and when they make mistakes, and they will, that's where the growth happens. That's your opportunity as a leader to coach, not criticize. To teach, not rescue, because rescuing people every time they struggle doesn't develop them, it enables them. If your team isn't growing in capability, you're probably too involved in their day-to-day. You're solving the problems instead of developing them to solve them. It's also your job to set the standard for leadership behaviors. You don't get to say, "We want leaders," and then punish people when they challenge the status quo. or when they take action without asking for permission. You want initiative, reward it. You want critical thinking, make room for it. Create a culture where leadership is recognized, celebrated, and expected at every level. And let's talk about feedback because this is non-negotiable. If you want to grow leaders, you have to give feedback. You cannot develop someone you are afraid to correct. Growth requires tension. It requires real conversations. You don't need to be harsh, but you do need to be honest. Sugar-coated feedback doesn't build leaders. It builds confusion. If someone's playing small, you call it out. If someone's out of alignment, you say it. If someone's winning, you amplify it. Developing leaders is also about visibility. Are you showing people the bigger picture? Are you helping them connect their work to the mission? Because when someone understands why their work matters, they start thinking like an owner. They start making better decisions. They stop waiting for clarity and start creating it. That mindset shift, that's leadership, and it starts with context, with exposure, with you taking the time to explain, not just delegate. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Sometimes you're not growing leaders because you're afraid of being outshined. That's ego. Let it go. Your job is not to be the smartest person in the room. Your job is to build a room full of smart, driven, capable people who don't need you for every answer. That's real leadership. That's legacy. You don't grow by being needed. You grow by multiplying. One of the best things you can do as a leader is ask yourself every single week, who am I developing right now? Whose thinking am I shaping? Who am I pushing into discomfort? Who am I giving real responsibility to? If you don't have an answer, you're not leading, you're just managing output. Leadership development has to be intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens through coaching, through challenge, through belief. You should be obsessed with building depth in your team because depth is what gives you scale. When leadership lives in every seat, not just the executive table, your company moves faster. You can take on more. You can solve bigger problems. You can grow without constantly needing to hire from the outside. So stop waiting until someone earns a leadership development. Start building it now in the new hire, in the assistant. In the person who's quiet but shows up consistently. Look for potential, look for ownership, and then pour into them. Train them, coach them, give them something real to lead. That's how you build a team that doesn't just execute, but elevates. A team that doesn't just work for you, but grows with you, because at the end of the day, your ability to lead isn't measured by what you can do. It's measured by what you can develop in others. That's leadership at scale. That's how you win, and that's how you keep winning. Too many leaders wait until something is perfect before they acknowledge it. They wait until the final milestone is reached, the revenue target is crushed, or the campaign goes viral. And in doing so, they miss the most important part of the process, progress. If you're only celebrating the end result, you're missing the opportunity to build belief, create momentum, and energize your team along the way. Progress is what gets you to the goal. Perfection isn't real, but progress is powerful. Let's be clear, I am not saying lower your standards. I am not saying reward mediocrity. What I am saying is this: if you want people to stay locked in, motivated, and operating at a high level, they need to know their effort matters before the scoreboard hits 100. People need to feel seen. They need to feel like the work they're doing, the late nights, the strategic thinking, the pivoting, the problem solving is noticed. That's what drives engagement. And guess what? Recognizing progress is not about participation trophies. It's about reinforcing behaviors that lead to results. When you see someone take initiative, pivot quickly, hit a micro goal, or solve something that used to block them that deserves to be acknowledged. Because the way you build a high-performance culture is by amplifying the right behaviors. People repeat what gets recognized. So if all you recognize is the finish line, don't be surprised when people burn out or disengage halfway through. Let's take a look at your team. How do they know if they're doing well? Is the only feedback they get when something's late, wrong, or needs improvement? That's not leadership, that's correction. And correction alone doesn't create loyalty. It creates pressure. Eventually, it creates resentment. People want to win, but they also want to know they are on track to win. That's what celebrating progress does. It tells people, hey, keep going. You're on the right path. Think about a runner. If they wait until they cross the finish line to feel successful, they're missing the experience of every step forward, every corner turned, every second they shaved off from their last time. Progress is what keeps them going. And in business, it's no different. If you want people to stay motivated for the long run, you need to build a rhythm of wins into the journey. This is especially true in high growth companies. When everything is moving fast, it's easy to blow past achievements without even acknowledging them. The team crushes a project, on to the next. You launch something new. Okay, great next quarter. But that mindset creates fatigue. It tells people their effort is expected, but not valued, that their results are a minimum, not a milestone. That's a dangerous message to send. Celebrating progress isn't about throwing a party every time someone does their job. It's about pausing just long enough to say, that mattered. It's about reinforcing the mission. It's about helping your team see how their work connects to something bigger. When people feel like they're part of a mission that's moving forward, they bring more energy, more ownership, and more creativity. That's how you build a culture of momentum, and you don't need a formal ceremony to do this. It can be a 30-second shout out in a meeting, a quick message, a public recognition in front of the team. It's less about how big the celebration is and more about how consistent it is. People want to feel progress. They want to be part of a culture that sees them, not just when they hit the big goal, but when they take one more step toward it. Here's something else. When you build a culture that celebrates progress, you also create more safety for innovation. Because if perfection is the only thing that gets noticed, then guess what people stop doing? Taking risks, trying new things, speaking up. They don't want to be judged before something's fully baked, so they stay quiet. They stay small, and you lose out on some of your best ideas. But if your team knows that growth is recognized, not just flawless execution, they'll show up bolder. This is especially important when developing newer team members or promoting internally. They're not going to get everything right immediately, and that's okay. But if you wait to affirm them until they hit perfection, they're going to lose confidence fast. Progress builds confidence, confidence builds performance, and performance builds results. As a leader, you set the tone. If you're only focused on what's not done, what's broken, what's missing, your team will feel it, and they'll start operating from fear, not from fire. But when you lead with both high standards and real encouragement, you unlock people. You get more from them, not less. So ask yourself, when's the last time you celebrated progress? Not just the big wins, but the incremental ones. Are you recognizing the people who are getting sharper, faster, better, even if they haven't crossed the finish line yet? Because those people are the ones building your future. Perfection doesn't build teams. Progress does. That next level culture you're trying to create. It starts by seeing the steps your people are already taking and letting them know they are on the right path. Because when people feel seen, they show up stronger. When they feel valued, they contribute more. And when they feel progress, they don't stop, they double down.